Quarantine Quiet Time. This is our first episode. I'm glad you're tuning in today. If you don't have a Bible with you, you want to grab one, you don't have to, but I'm going to try to help you understand how to read the Bible a little better throughout this process. So I encourage you to grab one, push pause if you need to do that. Other than that, before we get in here, we need to make sure we thank our sponsors. First of all, Purell. We need to thank Charmin, Extra Soft, Clorox, and lastly, Lysol. I want to thank you guys for sponsoring our video. Not that you gave me any money or anything, but maybe you'll send some product my way. That would be great. Other than that, let's jump into this. We're going to be in the book of John today, chapter 8. And I had some friends that had a little bit of a problem, where they had a question a couple weeks ago. They were looking for the book of John, and they were like, hey, how come my John says 1 John or 2 John? And the problem is that there's a guy named John who wrote multiple parts of the Bible, and it's a little confusing, but when we refer to just John, that would be his gospel. That would be his story about Jesus. So you look Matthew, Mark, Luke, and then John in the New Testament. So that's what we're going to be in, John chapter 8. We're going to start reading at verse 31. And here's what it says. To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." That's going to be key coming up here. Truth will set you free. They answered him, "We are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves of anyone. How can you say that we shall be free?" And we're going to stop here for a second because it's important. They're asking a good question. It's like he'd come up to you and say, "Hey, if you do what I tell you to do, you're going to be free." And you're like, "I'm not a slave, though. That doesn't make sense, Jesus. Like, what are you smoking today?" And that's what the Jews are saying. They're like, we're not slaves to anyone. We're free people. And yes, they lived under the Roman government, but they were free to practice their religion and do what they needed to do that. And so here they're saying, Jesus, what do you mean? Who said anything about freedom or slavery or anything? This is kind of weird. And then it says, Jesus replied, "I tell you the truth. Everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. I know you are Abraham's descendants, yet you are ready to kill me because you have no room for my word. I am telling you what my Father and I have seen in my Father's presence, and you do what you have heard from your father." "Abraham is our father," they answered. They're like, "Hey, we don't even know your dad. Like, what are you talking about here?" Like, they're like, Abraham, our descendant, that's our father. And Jesus says, "If you were Abraham's children," said Jesus, "then you would do the things Abraham did." That's a dig right there. "As it is, you are determined to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. Abraham did not do such things. You are doing the things your own father does." Now, Jesus is having this argument with these these Pharisees, these religious leaders who claim to be like super good rule followers. And he's saying, hey, yeah, but you're following the wrong rules. See, you're following all these other rules that you had set up. You're not actually following the rules that God set up. You're so worried about following laws and commandments that human people defined that you've totally forgot the whole originator. You've totally forgot who God is. It's kind of weird to talk about freedom in a time where we're not really free, where a lot of us are confined to our house or confined to our neighborhood or our community or whatever it is. We're free, but we're also like not really free. You know, like I tried to go to the gym the other day and I couldn't go to the gym. I tried to go get a cup of coffee the other day and I couldn't go get a cup of coffee. And at some point, I'm waiting for a little notification on my phone to pop up and say, hey, you can't even leave your house anymore. So it's interesting that we have this verse about freedom and slavery, and we're in a time where we're feeling the tension between freedom and slavery. But Jesus says that the slavery is not like a physical one. It's one that when we sin, we become slaves to that sin. That sin becomes our master. Not that we're physically stuck in our house or we physically have a master who tells us what to do, but there's something, a decision that we have made that starts to weigh on us and somehow has control of us. A lot of us, I know I did this, man, for years and years. I tried to justify my sin, even though I knew it was wrong. I would try to justify it and say like, well, as long as nobody's getting hurt, then it's okay. Well, as long as they don't find out, then it's okay. Or I would even say something silly like, God loves me, and if God is love, then God loves fun, because fun and love, those kind of go together. So whatever I do, as long as I'm having fun, it must be okay in God's eyes. Even though the Bible, even some things I was doing were just explicitly wrong. And I knew, like, even the Bible would say exactly, do not do this. And I would do it and then justify it because if God is love, then he wants me to have fun. But the truth is, just because something's fun and just because something makes me feel free doesn't actually mean that I'm free. Here's our big question this week, and I want to ask you a big question every single week, and you can either comment back to us or you can just marinate on it yourself. But what is something you do or have done that you thought was very freeing to you? That you thought, oh, I get to do whatever I want right here. Oh, I can do this as much as I want. And then it came back to bite you. Came back to understand that, wow, I was not free. In fact, I was a slave to that thing this whole time. Let us know, and we can't wait to see you guys back here tomorrow for our next edition of the Quarantine Quiet Time.